Hi, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Indianapolis, Indiana.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
Hey guys, we've loved answering all of your questions so far. If you'd like to hear your question on the podcast, please send them to us on Instagram at Wheel Talk Podcast or by email to wheeltalkpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks.
What up, guys? So it's Becca here. We have a special episode for you today. On I think October 10th, I was part of a panel discussion for the Indiana Clay Conference, and Rebecca Graves Prowse was there with me, and so was Joshua Heim, who are both my good friends, and we had a talk about business, and it was a really good discussion. And so what you're going to listen to today is that. So the audio is kind of shmeh because we had microphones and I set the microphone on the floor, but I think it's okay. The moderator was Justin Rothshank and Rothshank. Sorry, Justin. Anyway, his mic is a little loud, just so you know. So I'm not going to do anything to it because we all know my approach. But yeah, I really hope you enjoy it and have a fabulous day. Okay, bye.
All right, I'm going to get things started here. This is a panel discussion that grew out of our last conference. We had a discussion with some educators from around the state talking about different things happening statewide in the education sector, and out of that conversation grew some feedback that there was some interest in knowing about business, clay-related businesses here in the state. So we pulled together this panel of folks all working here in Indiana in business related to clay, and everyone on the panel does something a little different with clay business. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their businesses in a minute. But before we do that, we just wanted to take an audience-wide poll on a few questions to help kick things off. So if you guys could raise your hand if you are making pottery full-time right now. Is anyone out there currently making pottery full-time? See a couple hands. Awesome. Does anyone have a backup job other than clay that they're working in right now? Do you know how much you make per hour? You don't have to tell us, but do you know? Okay. Are you comfortable pricing your work if you're working in clay? Are you comfortable with the pricing structure of your work? Any hands out there saying?
That's a negative.
Looks like a negative. Is anyone selling on social media right now? A lot of folks. Okay. Does anybody out there have a passive income stream? Does anyone even know what a passive income stream is? A few hands. Does anybody use a bookkeeper or an accountant?
Raise your hands. Okay.
Do you have your own email list? You people. Do you have your own website? A lot of folks. Awesome. So these are some things that we're going to talk about. This panel, in talking with these folks, what we really wanted to put together was a very candid discussion of what daily business looks like in the pottery or ceramics sector, and even talk perhaps specifically about sales, income, goals, what it takes to make a living doing things in clay. So on our panel, we have Becca Otis, Josh Heim, and Rebecca Graves. And I also wanted to just highlight, we are recording this panel. Becca is recording this panel for her podcast with Ryan Durbin that's called Wheel Talk, a business-focused podcast. So just so you know, we are recording what we're talking about. But I'm going to go ahead and let maybe Rebecca kickstart things off. Just give us some background about yourself and your business, and we'll just go down the line.
I'm Rebecca Graves. I have a studio here in Indianapolis on the Near East Side called Gravesco Pottery, and we are a production studio selling primarily wholesale and also to private label clients and a little bit of retail. I did not come to clay through school or through any plan of any form. I spent a little over 20 years in corporate retail as a regional director doing store design, did graphic design, web development, and I was writing patterns for hand knitters when I accidentally stumbled into clay because I needed buttons for a photo shoot. And from there, I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole, ditched all of the other forms of creativity that I was participating in, and it's all clay all the time. So I've been doing this full time for about 10 years now. And 4 years ago, we moved from Angola, Indiana, up at the northern corner of the state, down here to Indianapolis, and got a studio at the Ruckus Makerspace, and have since expanded from that 700 square foot studio into just over 5,000 square feet, and we're looking for a space that'll be about 10,000 square feet for next year to expand into. I have a team of 13 right now that work with us. Some of them are production potters. Some of them came to the crew with no experience in pottery whatsoever, and we're teaching them from the ground up based on what their specific skill sets are. And this year, my husband joined us full-time as our shipping manager as well. So now it's a full family affair, as well as, my fun side project that turned into my whole life in a good way.
Cool.
Oh, I have one.
I can, yeah. My name is Joshua Heim. I'm the founder and creator of JH Pottery Works, and that is based in Warren, Indiana. There's 7 people and a cornfield there, so that's nice. It is a class-based pottery studio, so I teach 6-week classes, 2-hour private events called Play and Clay, and then I do clay camps for kids over the summer. And then I also have about 2 or 3 wholesale accounts, and then my wife and I own a flower shop and greenhouse that she formerly grew up working at, and that's where I sell my pottery out of that storefront. And then 3 kids, and for an added bonus, I just started at Huntington University being their adjunct prof teaching their clay classes there. So I got into clay as a junior in high school. They showed a 17-year-old guy how to play with mud and fire, and it didn't stop after that. So worked for Kevin Lehman in Eastern Pennsylvania, where they do the Strictly Functional Pottery Show. So it was neat to sit in and listen to a juror pick a show and go through the slides and be able to get that type of input. Learned how to sell wholesale through Kevin, and then we moved to Indy. I worked for Beach Grove Clay Works for 5 years, and then that's when the flower shop became available, and I walk 20 feet and go to work, so it's a pretty sweet gig.
Hi, I'm Becca Otis, and I am from, I am here, but I'm from, so I live in Indianapolis now, but I actually just got here in January. I have been living in Washington State for the last 8 years. I owned a brick and mortar store there. I've been doing clay I keep saying that I've been doing clay for 10 years for like the past 3 years. So I don't know for sure how long, but full time I've been doing it since 2014. I went from a studio in my basement I went from my living room to a studio in my basement, then to expanding onto my front porch so it looked like a meth lab, and then I opened up a 3,000 square foot brick and mortar doing clay-based classes, production, and paint your own pottery, and just like a community studio as well. And that was in a small town in Washington. And then COVID hit, and I decided I hated it, and came here. And now I'm Rebecca's lead production potter, and I also do pots on the side. And so, yeah. And just so you know that I'm legit.
You were concerned.
Yeah, just so you know I'm legit. My very first client and very first order was Starbucks. So that was a fluke, but and it was a one-time thing. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at, and I mostly do production. And that's kind of, that's my shtick.
Cool.
Awesome. So when I was talking with all three of these folks about business, they all three said, we want to really get into the nitty gritty of things we wish we knew when we started and no one told us or there wasn't a workshop about. So I guess my first question is, sort of with keeping that in mind, how did you write a business plan and how did you project your sales either from week to week or month to month of when you first got started? And how do you track those sales now? So that's a big question, but you could sort of pick that. I'm really specifically interested in that financial side because we're all thinking about how we make the jump from this being more than a hobby to an actual income stream.
And also, I should mention that we will be sharing actual numbers. So, don't be surprised.
Yeah. You want to kick this one off?
Sure. So, I actually am from a background in business. I did retail management and then I did office management before that. And in 2014, I told my boss I hated my job and left. And I cried all the way to my friend's house. And then she said, how much money do you have? And I said, $6,000. And she said, okay, let's figure out how much you need. And she actually helped me build a business plan and build a budget for the next couple of months for me to work that. I mean, at the time, I owned a house, $1,200 rent, and all the things. So, and I was 24. And so yes, I did build a business plan and I had no idea what I was doing. So I have a background in graphic design and I made it look really nice. And I put together what products I would like to sell and the projected income via the months that I'd like to sell them, knowing that, July and June are going to be higher months than January and February, and kind of projected what I wanted to make and calculated the cost that I had as a resident, and then was like, okay, well, I got to make it or I'm shit out of luck. So, I had my mentor said that once you have to start feeding kids at a table, which I don't have kids and I didn't have a table, but once you have to start feeding people, then you make it work. And we have a saying that if you need money, find it. And so really it's just a big hustle. But business plan did happen. I don't think it helped, but now I make business plans pretty much yearly and they do help, and it's more about projecting my goals for the year and what I've done in the past years as to what's reasonable. Like when I was doing it at the very beginning, I was like, I'm gonna make this and this and this. And now it's more like, okay, what's realistic for me and for my life and for what I need? It's not about like, I wanna make $1 million. It's about, okay, I need to make $40,000 this year. How am I gonna do that? So.
Go.
Okay, thanks.
Go for it.
I was a junior in college and I had all business roommates, which made life very interesting as the only art major. And I said, I have a free elective, what should I take? And they recommended taking an entrepreneurship class, which was a senior level course and was closed to non-majors. I petitioned the prof and she said, the only reason I'm letting you in is because you're the only art major in my history of teaching at the university to ever request entry. And that blew me away because I'm like, shouldn't that be for all art majors? And so the final was to write your own business plan. And so there was a lot of fluff in it. However, that's what we were tasked to do. And because I was doing classes, it was, I want X amount of dollars a year in income. Therefore, in order to do that, I'm going to need 1 or 2 kilns of this size. I know what they're priced. I need 5 to 10 wheels. I know what they're priced. I need this size of a studio space. So basically, I figured out what those costs were, deducted all of that, and then figured out what is a reasonable price to price classes, and then went, okay, classes are going to be 6 weeks, or are they going to be 8 weeks? And then it was, okay, I need to do this many classes a week, which ended up being Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I need to teach 6 of them or 7 a year to make this amount of money. And so that's what I did. And I'll be honest, did it suck at times to do 4 classes a week and be the guy that, you know, recycles the clay, mixes glazes, loads kilns, comes home for supper, kisses the kids and the wife, and then goes back to clay class and all that sort of thing? Yeah, it did. But I got where I needed to get to, and now I only have to say do 2 classes a week because the ball was able to get rolling at the rate I wanted it to. Now, it took 5 years to get to that point, but that's how I approached it in that regard.
So my background in corporate retail, I think in business plans. I dream in business plans. Like, you can't say to me, can you make this mug, without me in my head going backwards from that mug to exactly how that works out as a business plan and where it's going to go and if it's going to be worth making that mug. Now, I started out in art, went to college for a whopping 1 year doing art, and then realized that my engineering brain wasn't good enough at math to go into architecture or engineering, but was definitely too linear for fine art. And so I went into retail store design for 20 years, where everything that I did was a business plan. I've, at the last 10 years, sat in an office in Toledo, Ohio, looking at Excel spreadsheets, and I could call a store in Wisconsin that I hadn't been to in 6 weeks and say, you didn't do this because I'm looking at these numbers, and I know that that hasn't been completed because every other store is trending up 15% and you're down 10%, so I know you didn't do the thing that you were supposed to do. So that's just the language that I think in. So when I got divorced, lost everything that I had, was fortunate enough to meet Steve Smith, and he was moving to his lake house and offered me his house in Ney, Ohio, in the middle of cornfields, in the middle of nowhere with a studio. And he said, babe, if you want the clay thing to work, go figure it out. Pay the utilities, keep the house nice when it gets shown for real estate, and when the house sells, you gotta figure out what the hell you're doing. And while I was there learning clay, completely immersed in it 24/7, and doing just enough graphic design to pay the electricity and buy some food, I built out a business plan of where I wanted to be in 5 years, where I wanted to be in 10 years, and then kind of worked back from that. So 10 years ago, my goal was that in 10 years I would be doing $500,000 a year in sales with a production studio, with the focus on employing other potters and talented people so that they didn't have to work a shitty part-time job or a shitty full-time job and do this on the side. They could actually do what they love during the day and then still have the time and energy to do it for themselves outside of that job. For me, that looked like, if I'm going to be at $500,000 in 10 years, my first 3 years I need to make maybe $36,000 to get by. What do I have to sell to get to $36,000? Is that going to be higher priced items and fewer of them, or is it going to be lower priced items and a lot of them? At that point, it made sense for me to do retail, and I was doing fine art fairs all over the Midwest, and I was doing between 30 and 40 shows a year. I am a hardcore introvert. That was the hardest damn thing I have ever done in my life. Like, the talking to people, one-on-one, not my thing. So 4 years ago when we moved here, I had been in a 12 by 12 foot studio working alone with one part-time assistant who was maybe 6 to 12 hours a week doing the things that I didn't want to do. And we decided to move to Indianapolis, and I wrote a business plan for the first 5 years that we're here. Right now we are on track for that in spite of COVID, and last year we were actually a little bit ahead of what I wanted to do. So when we moved, or the year before we moved here, I did $54,000 working solo. The first year that we were here, I did $85,000. The second year, $157,000. Last year we did $298,000, and this year, year to date, we're a little over $430,000 in annual sales, and now have a team of 13 with 4 full-time production potters.
Heck yeah.
And I want to say something too. That's not profit.
That is not profit. There's no profit yet. We're not to the fun part with profit. I basically have enough out of it to pay our living expenses, and my husband working with us full-time, that's been a little bit more of a challenge than I expected it to be, but totally rewarding. The goal is that next year we'll get to $1 million in annual sales. I will actually, for the first time, be able to take the salary that I want to out of the business and give everybody a raise. We're very close to everyone being at a certified living wage. Even our part-time crew is at a certified living wage right now. And yeah, none of that would have been possible without extrapolating that business plan. So for me, it all comes down to, I want to make, like this year, the goal is $600,000. I want to make $600,000 this year. How much do I need to make each month? And then how many pots do we need to make to hit that number? And if it's too many pots, I look at my pricing structure and raise my prices, which if you raise your prices $1 or $2 across the board, doesn't really impact the customers, but can make a huge difference on the bottom line.
Truth.
So you're all involved in slightly different business models, and I'm curious, when we're thinking about business planning and numbers, like you just ended with, raising, if you're making, let's say, 10,000 mugs a year, and you raise the wholesale price by $1, then you've just made $10,000. And then to translate that, I'm thinking real numbers. So how many, what is your, for those of you making pots as your living, how many pots are you making? And then Josh, from a class standpoint, which I see maybe that is a similar thing, what does it take to have like from sheer numbers, how many students or how many classes, what do you need to do to make that income come in and have it be a living wage or something that you can actually count on?
For my studio, that means this year between 1,500 and 2,500 pots a week, depending on what we're making. So we do some hand building. The majority of what we send out the door is wheel thrown. And my goal is that each of the production potters is able to make a living wage at piece rate, but also everyone else in the team who's trimming and doing the glazing and loading the kilns is also able to make a living wage. So for us, that usually comes in around 1,500 to 2,500 pots a week.
You're a part of.
Well, oh, yeah.
Which Becca is a big part of as the lead production potter.
Hi. You're next in line.
I know, but you work with her.
Oh, okay. Well.
This is normal, by the way. Just to
Yeah,
let
we've known each other for a long time. So I want to talk about that, but I also want to say before I was here and when I was in Washington, which it costs twice as much to live in Washington as it does here, I worked really hard and made very little money. So I lived in a small town, and my motto was, if my neighbor can't buy it, I'm not selling it, which can work and does work if you do it correctly. So I would probably make 100 pieces a week, start to finish. And I was doing shows every single weekend from May to October, Friday through Sunday. I also had a shop, and I had an employee back home. So the way my system worked was, I'm really bad with words. The way that my income worked was, it's a hard word, was I went from about $30,000 my first year to 40 to 70 and then to 80. And like we said, not profit, but because I lived in my house that was my studio, that was all expensed out. And so my living wage was really small. I once had a bookkeeper look at my books, and she was like, "How are you living?" And I was like, I don't know.
In a van down by the river.
Yeah, in a van. I've lived in my studio. I've lived in an office. I've lived in my van. So my living wage was a lot different than a lot of other people's, but I expensed absolutely everything. So I lived great in my mind. But now, now what that looks like, I actually took a pay cut to be here, technically. And now I make about 100 to 150 pots a day, and my piece rates generally average from $1 per pot to about $4 per pot. And so it depends on whether it's for one of our specific clients or whether it's for Gravesco specifically. And I end up making about $1,000 a week. So I'm at I'll probably be at like 40K at the end of this year.
I think you're gonna be a little higher than that, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like at the beginning, when I came here, I was doing a lot lower pots, lower price pots, but yeah, and I also work hourly as well, but in those days I make a lot less, but it's whatever. I like being at the studio, so it's fine with me. And I'm very comfortable, with like where I'm living, and yeah, first time ever in an apartment.
Upgrade.
Woo!
For classes, kind of what Justin was asking, I figured I needed about 15 to 20 people every 6 weeks to take a class, or I'm going to have repeat customers. That's the other aspect, or claim members, because I'm going to have the people that get into this for the first time, try it, love it, and then they're now my regulars. I'm going to have the one-time people that just do it for 6 weeks. I'm going to have my seasonals. So I'm going to have my people that really hit the studio hard in the early spring and early summer, and then they kind of drop off. They don't stick out the cold weather months, which is totally fine. But I knew it was about an average of 15 to 20 people regularly per classes, just for my adult classes. Now, if those numbers were a little less, I knew, okay, let's up play camps over the summer then, or let's up the 2-hour private sessions where people can bring a group of people in. I teach them how to make a small bowl on the wheel, or we use slabs of clay and they get to make their own 16-ounce mug. So it was really looking at those 3 platforms and going, okay, I didn't do as many people for the 6-week classes, so let's push the one-time classes. And I pushed those through social media, or making friends with a graphic designer and getting them to make a really cool 4x6 postcard that I just passed out everywhere. And even some of them in a big stack, I left a note on one that said, you find this, you get, buy one, get $20 off, something like that. And I know people that would pin them to their refrigerator and save the postcard until they were able to do the class. So that's how, I broke it down in terms of how many people can I sell a class to make sure I stay at the level I need to pay rent, buy clay, pay myself, all those sorts of things.
I forgot something.
Okay, go.
Okay, I want to talk about the retail aspect too, because I'm the only one of these guys that has had an actual retail store. I did paint your own pottery, and we did do the China crap. So, which honestly I love. It's great.
It's not.
No, it is. Those, like, you can get a little iguana. Like, they're so cute. So anyway, I started off saying, like, I'm only going to do my pots that I make and people can paint them, and then I just full on switched. We bought from China, and it was great. So my business plan at the beginning, I actually had to write a business plan. I got a loan from my parents, because it was easier to get one from my parents than a bank. But I got a loan from my parents, and my dad made me write a business plan to him for the studio. And we started off with based in classes, and then it completely switched to doing member-based, and then paint your own pottery. And the paint your own pottery completely took over. And somebody told me once, like, if you can sell to kids, money. Mm-hmm. So if that is something, that is also something that nobody really told me about, and it became such a huge part of my career, and it was super lucrative. Like, we were making probably 10 grand in paint your own pottery stuff every month, and it was only getting better. I didn't even have a sign, okay? Like, my awning was ripped off. Like, if you can't tell, I'm not very formal. So, like, it was not a great, like, look, and I still did great. within it. And then also, if I needed money, what we do is flash sales. And since I can throw fast, we do a flash sale. I need money to pay the bills this month. Super honest with my customers. Be like, hey guys, guess what? At the end of the month, can't pay the bills. Who wants bowls? Like, make the same bowl over and over and over, make 300 of them, sell them on Facebook, sell them for $12, and I've got rent. So if you need money, find it.
Yeah.
But flash sales really did get me through.
Yeah, after you started doing flash sales, I was like, oh, hell yeah. When we were moving down here and I needed a new kiln, flash sale. We need to sell 54 mugs at this price to pay for this kiln. Who wants to buy a mug? And then we did it again with buying a new pug mill. So we have to sell 135 mugs to buy this pug mill. Who wants to help me? And we sold the 135 mugs like that, and we're able to pay for the pug mill. Because of my previous divorce and because of COVID shutting down small business loans and business lines of credit, I had fortunately not been able to get a loan because of my divorce. So that was kind of how I got to the point that we were able to buy all of our equipment with no debt. Then I got a business line of credit, and 6 months later, it got shut down because of COVID. So it was fine. Like, go back to the original model of, oh shit, we need some money, you want to buy some stuff. And it's pretty much been that since then. We're running the business with very little debt, under $10,000, and flash sale when we need something.
And I think it's underestimated the value of being completely transparent with your customers.
Absolutely.
Completely underestimated, because I have gone on and literally said, I've told my customers how much I made. I've told them that I have no money. And if you have a quality product and you are like, hey, you guys need this, like, let's do this right now. Like, I would give a free pinch pot, which is not an actual pinch pot, it's a small bowl, a pinch of this, a pinch of that. And I would give a free pinch pot for everybody that shared the post, you know? And just be super transparent about that. And it's, people want to help. And I think that that's super underestimated by especially artists.
Absolutely, and there's a huge push for social media to get as many followers as you can on social media. I've never pushed for that. I have less than 9,000 followers after all the years I've been on Instagram, but my followers are engaged and they're involved, and we have conversations in the stories and in the comments. And when we need to buy new equipment or we need something from those followers, they're there for it. It's been really humbling and amazing.
Oh, can we talk about customer base? I'm sorry.
That was excellent.
I was going to sort of move into that. So we've talked a little bit about getting started and how many pots or how many customers you need, but where do you find those customers? And I mean, it's one thing to say I need to make 100 pots a day or 1,200 pots a week, but then what do you do with all of those?
Yeah.
Or if you know that you need to get 18 students, where do you find the students? And we all know about social media. Let's talk a little bit more explicitly. If, as opposed to saying social media, let's say, you know, what is that specific strategy that you're tackling?
So for me, being that business plan mind, when I first wrote my business plan and shared it with my mentor, Steve, he went, yeah, that's great, babe, but you got to sell those things. You can't just make them. And it's so true. So for me, a big chunk of it comes from social media, primarily Instagram, a little bit of Facebook, and a lot of Pinterest. I have, I think, 167,000 engaged followers on Pinterest. So while I'm on there just dinking around looking at like cute outfits for fall, I'm also in the middle of that. That's why we always end up wearing the same thing. I will also be pinning or repinning things from my own website so that if somebody sees in my feed, I'm like pinning things that I like. They might also like this. I kind of thread things of my own into the feed, and then they'll click through and buy it on the website. So that's been a really big help. But the primary place that I've been doing business this year has been on faire.com, which is a wholesale site. And we did, it's faire.com if you're interested. It's amazing. But we did $9,000 on fair when we joined last year. This year, we're close to $300,000 in sales so far through that platform, just by really playing with the SEO and looking at the terms people are searching for and putting them into our descriptions. And then beyond that, a lot of it has come from social media conversations. Like, I work with a big food blogger. We do about $250,000 to $300,000 a year with this food blogger. And she found me because I was posting on Instagram about moving to Indianapolis and the struggles and the challenges and trying to find a place here to have a studio. And someone in Chicago saw it, and we became Instagram friends. And this food blogger in Chicago knew her neighbor and knew that she did pottery, and over the fence was like, hey, my friend's looking for a potter. And she said, that's way too big, that's not what I want to do. But I know this person in Indianapolis that's looking for that kind of work. And that's how we got hooked up with this big project. So for me, social media is a huge part of how we're selling, but so much of that is because I'm engaging authentically with people and telling my story and really having a conversation, and not just, I made this, I made this, I made this.
Yeah, for classes, because we live in a very rural area that has smaller pockets of community that talk with everybody. If you want something to spread around town, you tell someone at the hair salon and a secretary at the church. And you got it, it's better than Facebook. But they all like to go and do because we don't live near anything. And so that was my main thing, get in with one of these groups, you know, get in with the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, get in with the homeschool moms, get in with just, I mean, because they all talk to each other. And get them, if they don't do a 6-week class, which is a bit to bite off, it's a big commitment, get them to come in and do a 2-hour class. Figure out how to be able to get a merit badge in clay for the Girls and Boy Scouts, and then be the only person that does it. So that was the other upside I had. Aside from going to a university or driving 40 minutes, you couldn't find a class-based pottery studio. So that was the upside for me. I was the market, which was really great. I just had to get people aware of where I was. And so that's where the postcard idea came in. Anywhere I was doing a flower delivery for our shop, dropping off postcards. Hey, can I leave postcards? Can I mail you some? Can I, here's a flower delivery. Oh, by the way, here's a postcard. You know, that sort of thing. And just really huffing it, quite honestly. Yes, Facebook is spectacular in that area to sell classes, again, because they want to go do a thing, share about it with all their guy friends, girlfriends, all the stuff, and then just say, hey, can you please tag me? And then all of a sudden I get a phone call. Hey, do you do business outings? Do you do team building events? Do you do, you know, mom's night out? So I'm like, yes. And the thing I do is I lie first. I'm like, oh yeah, we do that. And I'm like, how am I going to do that?
We have that in common.
Oh yes.
We do too.
Yeah. Lie, cheat, and steal. That's what I tell people. And so then that ball got rolling. What was fascinating to me that I'm making the right amount of headway was the school secretary and her husband, a new electrical company was putting in towers through our town, and they dug up a lot of ground, unearthing a lot of clay. A farmer I had never talked to ever called me and said, you know there's some clay in the ground? I'm like, yes, I do. Potter. Would you like it? Is what he asked me. And so for the fact that this farmer who was born and raised in this area, when clay comes from the ground, there's a potter in Warren, I should probably call him. And for him to make that connection, I'm like, I'm doing the right thing. I am on the trajectory I should be on to do that. And you get those little reassuring bumps. So that's at least what I did with classes. So.
Shameless self-promotion cannot be enough.
Yeah.
Like, it's so surprising because it feels, especially for me as an introvert, it feels really uncomfortable to be like, hi, I'm Rebecca, I'm a potter. But at the same time, people actually care and are interested and want to know those things.
And they've all done it in high school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Except for me.
Yeah.
Right, me too.
Or have a cute little blonde 4-year-old as a daughter. That is the face of
Yeah.
your social media,
Yeah.
which is spectacular. I was wood firing at Taylor University, and whoever manages Taylor's Instagram page messaged me. It was like, I just ran into your daughter. She's so amazing. We love her post. I'm like, it's my page. Like, yeah, but it's her. We got to meet her. And I'm like, what? So that's the other aspect. Get cute kids.
And cats.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the
Play
internet.
people with cat people. Shut up. Okay, so I have I've always been what's the word?
Obnoxious?
Yes. When you shit.
Hustler?
Yeah, no, yes, but no,
Sounds like.
no, when you
Two
like.
words? One word.
No, I've always been a.
They paid to be here.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I make friends with everybody.
Yes. Extrovert?
No.
No.
Oh. Whoa. No. Okay. I'm a networker. I've
Yes.
always been a networker. So, but first, and what I've always learned growing up in church is that if you want to sell anything, you do it in church. So, when I moved to Washington, I didn't know anybody where I was, and I did get a good community through working at retail. But where it really happened was I started going to all these church events. I don't actually go to church very much anymore, but that's honestly my biggest tip. Go to church. And then find out if they have a craft show and then sell at the craft show. And I remember the first craft show that I did at church, and it was like $1,500 or something. And I had crappy pots, and I think they were like $3. And so that's actually that's where I built a lot of my community. And also making friends with other business owners. You know, in a town my town was 20,000, his town's 1,200, and she's in when I was in that. So if you're in a medium-sized town, find all your business owners, go to your restaurants, go to everybody in town on Main Street and make friends with them because they know people and they will get you connected. I've put flyers on pizza boxes. I've put flyers in Chinese restaurants. I've put flyers everywhere. But also, if you do that, and especially if you're in a medium-sized town, Facebook can be extremely helpful for that. I always say that Instagram's for the world and Facebook's for your community. So use that to your advantage because when I was doing flash sales, if I did a flash sale on Instagram, I would sell maybe 10 pots. If I did a flash sale on Facebook, I could sell 200 in a night. So, and that's before they were even made. So, and like we say, live. So yeah, use that to your advantage the community on Facebook was all my local community, and that's who my main customers were, and they still are there. But now that I've kind of moved and progressed into more of an online sale, now I'm moving into Instagram. And also my customers right now are potters. Her customers are not. So you have to know what your customer base is. If your customers, I have 2 lines in my pottery, in my work.
This is my favorite thing ever.
I have 2 lines. I have the fancy cups and I have shitty cups. So fancy cups are for potters, shitty cups are for people. Okay?
Her sign at the last booth was spectacular.
Fancy cups are $100, shitty cups are $15. Okay? The shitty cups are made well, but they're made fast. And the thing that you need to know about your customers, especially if your customer base is not potters, is they could give 2 craps if it looks great on the bottom. Okay? You need to know your customers well enough, and if you can make a piece that they pick up and they're like, this is great, and you're like, I don't know, you're not selling to a potter, you're selling to a human. And they're gonna love that no matter what. I went to a show and there was this lady there, and this is where I got the shitty cup concept from. She had these cups and they were fantastic. You could tell they were thrown in maybe a minute, and they have thumbprint all the way in the bottom, and they're just bulged up. They were glazed really sloppily, and they were $12 or 2 for $20. She had to line out the booth And I was like, that's what I want. And when I went up there, I had 3 things. She's like, how about 30? And I'm like, yes. Yes. And you know what? People love that kind of stuff. We take ourselves way too seriously in this. I mean, you just have to know your customer. If you're making fancy pots, you're making fancy pots for rich white women and for potters. And so know your customer base.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with doing classes in a very farming, ag-related community. For whatever reason, class cost over $200 was too much. But if for 8 weeks, so it was $240 for 8 weeks. But if I priced a 6-week class, it was $180. So it was still $30 a week to take class, but because it was under that $200 mark, oh yeah, I'll sign up for a 6-week class. And I'm like, you have an $80,000 pickup truck, but a 6-week class was too much. That's fine, whatever. Same thing with the mugs. I can maybe push a $20 or $30 mug out of our flower shop selling in our community because they don't fully understand an $80 to $100 mug. It just doesn't grasp it. Does it hold coffee and keep it warm? Yes. Then why should it be more than $30? That sort of thing. And so I know I can't move my higher end stuff out of our flower shop, but I can move regular basic bitch mugs out the door all day long, and then make them a little cute. You know, we do a Valentine's mug, we call it the love mug. We do a Mother's Day mug in conjunction with our greenhouse open house. We do a Father's Day cup, and then we do a Christmas mug. So getting the community used to the fact that, oh, it's February, I'm really looking forward to the next iteration that Josh is doing. So it's creating new ideas for them to do that. And then again, continuing with the networking. Because of the size of our town, I can call our county commissioner on his cell phone. But I can't do that if my county commissioner, I lived in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But because of where we live, I can. And he's brought his staff out to do a clay class and then posted all over his personal government Facebook page. And then I got more people to come to class, you know, so it's very much who you know.
Yeah.
And that cost me a free commish mug that I gave him. Because I was like, hey, you need a mug that says commish on it. And then he took it to work. And so it's, that networking idea too.
Well, and you're really big on knowing all the business owners in town. And like, you're in Indianapolis, so like, that's where you find your community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really don't sell that much in Indianapolis. Most of what we're doing is shipped. But one of the things I wanted to touch on briefly is, there's this stigma that if you're making the shitty pots or you're making the fast pots or you're doing production that you've sold out. And I absolutely do not even remotely subscribe to any of that, because for me the option was I could continue hand carving every single piece that I made like I was when I started and just barely get by and struggle to find my customer base in Northeast Indiana, or I could shift, pivot, and start selling cups that are not being sold to potters and are not such a narrow demographic. And by making hundreds of those a week, I have built a skill level, and everybody on the team has built a skill level that absolutely anything they want to make, they can make it without a struggle, and they can make it quickly and efficiently without a struggle. So when they go to do those fancy cups, or whatever it is that is truly the brainchild, the muscle memory is there, and the ability to make it efficiently and really well is there, because they're just, it's like playing scales on a piano when you're learning to play, or when you're learning to play an instrument. It's just exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to highlight some of the other real gems that I heard from you in that conversation, I think it's really critical to know that there's billions of people in this world, and so the $100 or $200 or $300 mug appeals to a certain component of those people, but you also have the other 6 billion people that you can also count as customers, and so that diversification is really important. And so thinking about diversification, this is a good segue. What are the I know as a studio artist, we have our high months and our low months, and cash flow can sometimes be an issue. What are those things that you do, for example, maybe a passive income stream, or taking the holiday sales and stretching that income out so that the slower months, like maybe February or March, what are some of those things that you think about as a business owner, or maybe I don't fully understand your business and you don't have that, but can you speak to a little bit about that diversification and following income streams in a way that allows you an annual income versus a weekly income?
Absolutely. So some of the things that I do for passive income are teach workshops. And I'm generally not teaching a how to make a thing workshop. I'm teaching this. I'm teaching how to do the social media, how to engage your audience, and how to ask people to give you money for the things that you make. But beyond that, like usually what I'll try to do is schedule those things for spring when I know that we're slow. This coming spring, we'll be doing a mastermind for 10 weeks with my good friend Deb, Swing Home, a Flowering Moon, and it's going to be a combination of how to build a business outside of a corporate structure using some of the tenets of working with the divine feminine, working with the seasons, and working with the phases of the moon, and incorporate that into building a solid business plan, knowing when to move forward, and really learning about yourself and what your own self cues are that we as Americans tend to completely ignore. It's like, ooh, that hurt, I'm gonna keep going. So that's one of the passive income streams that I do, and we'll end up recording all of the workshops that we do and then selling those individually. I also do t-shirts that are print on demand, because if you have a great idea for a t-shirt, freaking do it. Somebody else is gonna think it's a great idea too, and you can make 10 bucks a shirt. Pop it on Instagram a couple of times and all of a sudden you sold 40 or 50 shirts and the electric bill is paid and then some.
For the summer, I realized, especially in our area, a lot of people scatter over the summer. Harvest planting is done, they want to go. Harvest is in the fall, they need a break, they're doing the Florida thing. And so it was hard to do 6-week classes over the summer with adults. So that's when I was like, well, clay camp. Because there are going to be kids that are home. And so there's 3 school districts that I surround, so I get their schedules and figure out what's going on with important games and that type of stuff, and then plan the clay camps accordingly. And I had a decent flow about that. And then COVID hit, and we were all with our children for way longer than we all should have been. And so then June hit, and I was like, would you like me to take your children for 2.5 hours? And they were like, yes, How much? We will pay thousands. And I'm like, okay. And so then I come, and would they like a t-shirt? Because now you have 3-foot billboards that say JH Pottery Works across the back that they're gonna wear everywhere. And so get them a cool shirt, that type of thing. So that was really helpful. That spiked the last 2 summers doing clay camps. And then a recent discovery was, where do teachers at those same public schools that I deal with, where do they get their clay? Are they getting good clay? And I buy in bulk, and so all of a sudden I'm now selling clay to different high school teachers and middle school teachers that get a quality clay product. And then also how to mix base glazes, how to fire the electric kiln, how to repair your electric kiln, things that I learned how to do because my kiln's broke. And being like, well, time to learn how to fix it because we don't live near anybody. And so these art teachers that are coming out of school get thrown into the clay class by their supervisors, and then they're like, I don't know much. And I'm like, come to the studio, let's do a workshop on this hand-built project. Let's do a workshop on, like I said, how to maintain your kiln, how to mix base glazes, how to keep your inventory low on your glazes, but have 10 different colors. And so that began to snowball just before COVID. So that was a little frustrating that we were really gaining some ground in that regard, but that was something that I didn't set out to pursue. That just kind of came up from the networking, talking with these teachers, getting kids out of the home and into the studio, things like that. So that was at least where passive income over the summers when I'm not doing the 6-week classes came from, and then the occasional pottery sale when it was near a holiday. So that's at least what I was doing.
So my passive income is both pottery and non-pottery related. So I was very fortunate to sell a house in 2018 and make some money from that. So I actually do small business loans to friends, and I make income through that, which is great. Somebody once asked me, like, do you always take money from your friends? And I'm like, yes, yes I do.
Remember I said we have a little bit of debt for the studio?
yeah, so I do that as well as like was mentioned before, I do a podcast with my buddy Ryan, and we have a Patreon, and so we have passive income through that every month. We don't actually bring a lot into it, like we're trying to build it up, but that's a great way. I know that a lot of potters have Patreons right now, and it's doing good if you can teach. It's a great way to get some money. I also accidentally became famous on TikTok. So I rode that stream for a while and made about $800 off of TikTok. And if I wanted to continue it, I could, but it's not, I don't want to. So that, and then I make stickers, and I draw stickers out and then print them out and sell those as well. So also, this is just a side note, if you are hustling, Goodwill has, on Mondays, it's $1.69 or something for the tag that was on sale the week before. And I've hustled so many Goodwill finds and sold them on Facebook Marketplace. And you can make $20,000 a year doing that, so. Just saying.
So we're getting close to the end. One of the things I wanted to highlight, Rebecca put together, maybe this is all three of you.
No, she did it.
We have a sheet here.
I forced you guys to answer my question.
It was awful.
One of the things that I think is important to highlight when starting a business is that you're not able to do it alone. There's always people that you either beg, borrow, and steal from for their support, or you actually pay them and hire them as consultants or as subcontractors or as employees. Things like a lawyer, an accountant, staff, business coach, marketing advice, graphic designers, things like that. And so there is a handout here with a lot of that. We didn't get into the specifics of that, but the handout actually has the specifics. So if you're interested in that, you can come on up and grab one. I think there's enough here for most of you. And then to end, sort of in line with that, I'm aware that being an artist and a studio potter is sort of a lifestyle. It's something that you do because you love it, and it's also a job, and as a result, it's easy to work too much. And so what are the things that you're doing? And also, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes the business needs to take a break, it needs to shift. Sometimes you break an arm or a hand, or your health makes it so that you can't continue. So what are the things, we have maybe 5 minutes, but what are the things that you guys do to take care of yourself and to keep in mind that this business is an evolving challenge?
First thing that I did to take care of myself was to hire a business coach who said to me, make a list of all the things you don't love doing in your business, and then figure out, if you spent that time doing what you love, how much money would you make? So I discovered that I freaking hate pugging clay, I hate wedging it, and I hate cleaning the floors. And so my first assistant, I realized that if I outsourced that to an assistant, I would be making an extra almost $1,000 a week instead of doing those tasks, but he was willing to do this job for $10 an hour and access to the studio. So I highly recommend looking at what things keep you outside of your zone of genius and figure out how to offload those so you can spend more time doing the thing that you're really good at.
Yeah. Yeah, I would second that. I mean, you don't want Josh doing your bookwork and accounting. Let's be real.
You want your wife doing that?
Well, yeah. Yeah, marry up too. That's the other recommendation. Yeah, marry out of your league. If you have the option to do this, so get them to slum a little. That's what I would recommend. But yeah, you don't want me doing the bookwork. You want me running the clay classes, and that's what I'm good at doing. The other aspect, at least for me, I also want to go to my daughter's running events. I also want to take them to school and go out, to the bakery, get breakfast, get cinnamon rolls, and then take them to school. I want to be able to do those things, and I set those as priorities. So that means if I'm doing that between, and help them get ready for school, do the lunch thing, we sit down and we have breakfast together as a family, If I make that a priority, that means I got to make that time up somewhere else in the studio. So that means after bath, bedtime, and brush hair and brush teeth, sing songs, pray, do all the things, I'm going back to the studio till midnight, 1 o'clock. Now, is that every single time? No, it's not. But I want to be able to, at least for me personally, set the standard. Can I literally walk away from what I'm doing in the studio right now to make my family a priority? If the answer is yes, I'm doing it. Now, with that time has to be made up somewhere else, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. But I wanted that to be really high on the priority list in terms of being present in my family's life, and as well as being a small business owner.
I could talk about this for 3 hours. At the beginning of COVID, I hit my max completely. And if you don't get anything from this, from me at least, take all of that from her and him. But if you don't get anything else, make boundaries now. Set them now. Set them before you start your business.
Yes.
Make sure you're setting a schedule and you're leaving on time. You are not doing yourself any favors by staying in your studio until 3 a.m. drinking the large Red Bull. No favors at all, okay? I have worked 90-hour weeks for 3 years straight without a break. And it is not fun, and it will wear you down. And the boundaries are super duper important to your mental health and your physical health. And I'm single, and I have all the time in the world, so it was always like, oh, it's fine. I don't have anywhere to go. It isn't fine. Go home at 5. If you're getting there at 8, go home at 5. If you have a home studio, make sure there's boundaries that you have set to leave. It's super duper important. When to say when is the biggest thing that you will have in your business life. And you could love something with all your heart and soul and get burned out on it and hate it for the rest of your life. Thankfully, I don't love pottery. Surprise, surprise. It's my job, and I'm good at it. And I was made to do pottery, but it is not my passion. And so that's the only reason that I can still do this. Because I've always had that in my mind. But, yeah, I mean, make time for your family, make time for your friends, and make time for yourself. Especially yourself. We make things like really romantic, especially in the clay world, because it's so fun and it's so wonderful. But you have to have hobbies outside of your job that's a hobby. Okay? Just keep that in mind.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you. We are right at 6 o'clock. We unfortunately did not give time for questions, but we're going to move into a gallery reception in a little bit. I think these three are going to hang out up here for a little bit.
Oh, I have stickers too. Come get stickers.
And so if you have questions, you're more than welcome to come on up and individually have a conversation. We've got these handouts here, so you're welcome to come and grab that. And before you leave, hang on, I'm going to pass this over to Seth to tell us about the rest of the agenda for the night.
Yo, higgity yo. It's Becca here. Hey, just so you know, thank you for listening. And also, we have... What do we have again? A Patreon. We have a Patreon that you should go, and if you want to donate to, you could donate to it. If you don't, that's cool too. But just Google Wheel Talk Podcast Patreon. Don't do the other one, because there is a Wheel Talk on Patreon, but it's not us. So make sure you get the right one. It's in the show notes. And also, leave us a review, because they're fun to read. Okay, bye!